Welcome to another inspirational conversation with an amazing leader. My name is Marc Pitman. I'm the author of the new Surprising Gift of Doubt. Currently today, as we're recording, it's still in the pre-order phase. And as telling Orlando in the green room that it's number 4 on the hot new releases on Amazon.
Come on.
3 of them, thank you. 3 of them are Chip Gaines, and Chip Gaines in the same book. So I'm not sure how he's playing the game, but he's playing the game well. So we're excited to be doing this. And rather than refreshing those stats, that was the first time I checked that list today. My wife suggested that I talk to people that I really enjoy and really admire, and talk about leadership and talk about doubt. And so we're getting to do that. And my next guest is an incredibly awesome human being, somebody I am so privileged to know, Orlando Bowen. Thank you so much for being here, joining us today.
Marc, I'm so excited. I'm excited for you. I'm excited for where you are on the, in the charts, and how you're climbing the charts. But it's not a surprise. The way that I've seen you consistently show up for people is consistent with where you're headed on the charts. So thank you for having me.
Wow, I received that. Thank you. That's wonderful. Tell for everybody that's watching, what is it that you're listed as the executive director of One Voice, One Team. What is the work that you do with that?
Yeah, so the two hats I wear, one is as you know, I speak corporately, speak to companies, businesses, universities, etc., colleges and universities.
So he says he speaks, and he's such a good speaker that speakers have asked him to come in and speak. So he's gotten to speak with the National Speakers Association folks and Black NSA and all, and so he's downplay. He is a big deal in that field. All right, go ahead. Sorry, sorry for interrupting you.
No, you're all good, man. So I have the real passion for leadership, right? We share that. And one of the voids that I saw over the years was that there are a number of young people that had so much talent, so much potential, but they didn't see it in themselves. And because they didn't see it in themselves, they made decisions that aligned with what they saw, right? So what we endeavor to do, and what we've been doing for the last 14 years, is equipping young people to see beyond their current circumstances, to tap into their leadership gifts and skills, some of which they don't realize are actually leadership gifts and skills, and to use those things to make a difference in someone else's life. And as they do that, they inevitably, as they're pouring into other people, they're growing and evolving, and they're seeing bigger pictures in terms of what their possibilities are.
So do you have a system, or are there ways, or is it different for each person? I love the idea of tapping into leadership skills that you don't even realize you have.
Yeah. We partner a lot with educational institutions, anywhere from like middle school, really from grade 4 up. And we do assemblies and workshops and presentations to students and to educators to help them curate those types of spaces where growth is possible, and really nurturing those environments. And we'll go on and we'll do an assembly, and at the end there's like there's a call to action, an altar call, if you will, right? So there's a call to action where there's an invitation to be a part of a movement that is designed to redefine possibilities for young people. And we prior to this current situation, we'd be out building houses for people who don't have, feeding homeless and people in need, planting trees, doing things where young people could see themselves right now in positions of contribution and difference making. And as they start to do that, and they would do that with corporate folks, some of our corporate partners, they start to think, well, I thought I had to do all of these things, check all these boxes before I could actually make a difference. If I can make a difference in this space right now, what's possible, right? Wow. And it gets them to start to dream more, dream bigger, and we journey with them and believe in them until and after they begin to believe in themselves, right? And help them bring some of those things to fruition.
Wow. 14 years. That must be an amazing, just to see the trajectory of people's lives over that time.
Yeah. It's been great. We've hired our second full-time staff member that was in our programming when they were in high school. So they went through high school, they served with us. We hired them over the summers to run programs for younger youth through our summer camp programming. They went off to college. finished their undergrad studies and now they're working here full time. To see that, and to the passion with which they come to serve, it's incredibly empowering, enlightening for all involved, and just galvanizing to say, you know what, we're doing something that's making a difference, and really giving young people the keys to make a difference in their own homes and communities and beyond.
Yeah, exactly. It's you see it right in front of you. That's amazing. One voice,
Mm-hmm.
one team.org if you want more information or to support their work. Uh, did you grow up knowing that you just wanted to be this inspirational kind of leader in this way, or was there? I know there were bumps in your path, and I'd love you to share those too. But is this something that you knew you wanted to do as a kid? This is the difference you're going to make, or
Well, you know what, Mark? I'm actually my default setting is a behind the scenes type of guy. I get, which is odd, right? It's funny now because I'm, out and presenting, and
yeah,
um, you know I get joy, immense joy, from seeing things come to fruition, where people redefine what's possible for themselves and for their families, or when they achieve things that weren't even on their radar. So those things, I'm like, yes, I'm in the back, like, yes. And then I remember someone tapping me, like, okay, we need you to come speak. And I'm like, whoa, I'm not a speaker. I'm the behind the scenes guy. I set things up. And they're like, no, but your journey will be empowering. And I argued. I was like, but I'm not that person. But there have been some bumps in the road that have shifted my perspective on what I'm called to do, what I need to be doing. And so now I embrace the discomfort. I embrace the times that I've doubted whether or not I was really living in my purpose and living
mm,
on purpose. And I've stepped into that in ways that I guess subconsciously gives others, a reason to do the same, right? And through that, we've been able to help people, redefine their own paths, redefine their possibilities, and to use their what they have. Sometimes they didn't realize that they had, to make a difference for others.
how did you get to the point of where people are saying you should tell some of your journey to where you actually did it? Because that can feel, especially for a behind the scenes person, but even for me, someone
Yeah.
like me who's, hey, there's a microphone, I'd love to get up there. There's one thing about being in front of people, there's another thing about being vulnerable and transparent.
Yeah.
What helped you? Like, were there some signposts along the path that made it so it was you dip your toe in the water and then you kind of go in a little further?
Yeah, well, I'll tell you, I've always wanted to make a difference, and wanted to use whatever I had to be able to make that difference. It was something that was modeled to us by my parents, grandparents. So they talk about raising the bar and achieving things, but then making sure you raise the floor. I have a coach that used to say that: raise the
Mm,
bar and raise the floor, so that other people could reach the bar. And as I worked in corporate and information technology, and I was on like a management track, but I felt like the raise the floor part was missing. I felt like I needed to do something that poured into others, because I saw people making decisions, and all I could think was, Mark, if they knew what was possible, despite what they've been through, if they knew what was possible, they might not do that. They might find hope. So I just started looking for ways to get involved in community, ways to serve, ways to make a difference, and so that having like a mentality that I just want to help. How can I help? And that's how it started for me. There was a school actually that I was volunteering at, and they said, we need your help. So my ears perked up, and I said, how can I be of service? And they said, well, we have a speaker that was supposed to come. They're unwell. They're supposed to speak on Wednesday, but they're not going to be able to make it. It's Monday. You have a couple days. We see how you connect with young people. Would you be able to speak? So I said, yeah, I could speak. And they said, okay, good. There's 2,200 kids. So I said, okay, cool. So,
oh,
all
right.
right. They're like, okay, don't worry about it. We knew you might respond like that. So we've split the group into two groups of 1,100 just for you. Right. So I was like, thank you. So Mark, so I have a younger sister, and I thought, what if I only had 60 minutes to talk to my younger sister for the rest of my life? What would I say?
Wow.
Right. And that's what I said to this group of young people. And I remember after the first group of 1,100, a few students came up and they said, sir, what you said changed our lives. And I was like, what are you talking about? You're the best motivational speaker that has ever been at our school. I'm like, I'm not, but I'm like, did someone tell them? Like, I'm not a speaker. I'm just helping out. They were just stuck. That's all. So, but I appreciate you sharing that. So what shifted for you? And they shared what shifted.
Mm.
And I was like, okay, cool. The school gave my number to a business that called and said, hey, we heard you're a great speaker. We'd like to book you. I said, I'm not a speaker. I'm sorry. And I got off the phone. I called my friend because I was upset. I was offended that they were calling me a speaker. I was just helping out. So I called my friend. Can you believe the audacity of these folks? They told people I'm a speaker. That I just wanted to help. They gave them my number. Now people want to pay me to speak. I'm not a speaker. And my friend said, you left your job in corporate America to do what? I said, I just want to serve. I just want to make a difference. And she said, so what if in speaking, you're actually making a difference and shifting possibilities? Are you telling me that you're not open? And I paused and I was like, whose side are you on anyway? You know, like, you're supposed to be on my side. But that was the beginning of a journey where I had to be open, even though I doubted myself. I didn't know that that was a space that I could contribute from. I started to think, well, let me just stay open, right? And that was the genesis of the journey.
Well, one of the things I know I've heard about, if you've shared your story,
Yep.
that I hope you'll share here. And it's not because this is totally defining you, but what I love about knowing you and having gotten to know you over the years is your heart isn't, well, if it's impacted, it's not negatively impacted by the betrayal that's gone on in the past. So I would love you to, if as much or as little as you want to share about your story, share that. And then some pointers on how, as a leader, you were able to, even if you developed thick skins and calluses, you didn't become calloused. You're still an amazing, amazing giving person when everything around this story anyway would indicate you wouldn't be.
Yeah, happy to share. You know, I was 26 years old and playing pro football, very active in community. I was training police in racial sensitivity. I was going into schools with officers to encourage young people to stand up for the right thing. I was working with sick kids and homeless youth and refugee families and newcomer families, and just trying to figure out what was the thing or the things that would really speak to my heart as I served. So as I was doing that, I was also married to an award-winning educator who happens to be a hottie. We had a 1-year-old son and we're pregnant with our second. I signed a contract extension and was going out to celebrate that extension. And I got to the meetup location first. And while I was waiting on my teammates, 2 armed individuals approached me, asking me if I had drugs. I was like, no, no. I didn't know they were armed at the time where they asked if I had drugs. I said no. I was on the phone at the time. So I continued on my call. And then one stopped at the rear of my vehicle and he says, are you sure? And I looked at him and I was like, who asked that? You asked me a question. I said, no. But then I thought to myself, but when I first saw them, I saw 2 guys. So where's the other guy? And as I looked over my opposite shoulder, I realized the other guy was standing in my blind spot. So I took a step back so I could see them both at the same time. And without many words being exchanged, one of them threatened to shoot me in the head. They grabbed me and started to beat me, just fist flailing. It was crazy, right? And I remember, being beaten, skin on my head split, and I was face down on the pavement, and all I could think was, I can't believe this is how my life is gonna end. And I was just like, God, not like this. It was just this moment where I was just, I remember talking to someone about it, just knowing. I was just like, I was at a point where I knew I was gonna die, and I ended up surviving the attack, but it ended up it resulted in a severe concussion that ended my football career. And the bigger challenge was that the 2 gentlemen turned out to be 2 corrupt undercover police officers who happened to work for the force that I trained in racial sensitivity, and the force that I was their spokesperson, and the force that I went into schools with their officers. I was close with the chief. So because I worked with so many amazing officers back then, and I still do to this day, I knew that someone was going to stand up and say something like, hey, we made a mistake. Hey, this is wrong, until that wasn't the case. because they were afraid to publicly say anything. And when the officers realized that I was their spokesperson, they then tried to, well, they covered up, right? So they tried to justify why my face was the way it was. And they went back to the scene where my vehicle was. They planted drugs by my car and then charged me with possession of a controlled substance and assault against a police officer, 2 counts. So now I'm like, can't play the sport or do my job that allows me to take care of my family, and I'm facing prison time. And it was this crazy, crazy journey. Like I've said, like I felt like I was living in a movie where things were just so surreal. I remember going to secure legal representation, and the lawyers looking at us, and I poured out what we had gone through, and the lawyers said, well, given the fact that you're a black male, in our professional judgment, we're going to recommend that you plead guilty to a lesser charge. And I was like, plead guilty? Why the heck would I plead guilty? I didn't do anything. And they said, yeah, but just given the fact, I mean, we don't want you to take this the wrong way, but you're a black male and it's 2 white officers, and we want this to go as smoothly for you as possible. And I was just like, you're not the one. And they weren't the only lawyers that spoke to that type of sentiment, right? So I was really challenged by that and really seeking, like this doesn't make any sense, right? And anyhow, to make a long story short, as we were journeying through the courts and the case, the arresting officer in my case was himself arrested by the equivalent of the FBI for trafficking cocaine. So when he was arrested, it kicked off a whole process that was kind of under wraps. Media wasn't allowed to speak to it, but we knew that it was happening because of our connections in media. So the DA's office reached out to me and wanted to ask me if I would allow them to drop the charges because, they just want everyone to go home and be happy. So I said, absolutely not. I said I'd rather be wrongfully convicted versus strike a deal on that premise, right? It wasn't that they were saying, we have confirmation that the officers were corrupt or shady, like you said. It was like it was being positioned in a whole other way. So I said, no, we're not going to do that. And, people thought I was crazy. They're like, you could be going to prison and they're offering to drop the charge and you're saying no. And I said, I don't want there to be any doubt around whether or not I was innocent. Like, I rather, so, maybe it wasn't the wisest decision by what people would say, or by what people would judge in terms of common knowledge, but it's what we believe to be the right thing to do, right? So anyhow, I was acquitted. The officer was sentenced to go to prison for 5 years. And, I wrote a letter of forgiveness to the officers and thanked them for the perspective that I gained through the process. And, the fact that it's really galvanized my commitment and our collective commitment to pour out and make a difference. One Voice, One Team was born during that time. And people thought I was crazy. They're like, why would you start anything? Your name is mud. Right? No one's ever going to support you. No one's going to send their kids to your programming. And I said, this is not about me. Right? This is about giving hope to folks who don't believe they should have reason to have hope. So that was like a real driver for us. Right? So that was the birth of what we've been doing and how we've been pouring out and making a difference. And, I'm grateful for it.
Wow. Well, thank you again thank you for sharing that. 'Cause that's, powerful. And for people that don't know why he said the equivalent of the FBI, you're in Canada, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's why it was the equivalent.
So here we have the RCMP here, our national
RCMP. Yes. Awesome. Well, so how do you go through that and not, well, I love that you have this, I'm not going to just acquit. I'm not just going to drop charges. We're going to see this through that. But there are some people that come through a process like that and it kind of galvanizes their lives in a crusty sort of way, in a way of angularity and anger. And I don't get that being around you. I get a whole different perspective. And why is it different for you? Or am I just seeing it wrong with my blinders.
No, I mean, I think everyone is different, right? And everyone's journey is different. And I remember, my uncle, um, who's come up through the civil rights movement and era when it happened. And he lives in Washington D.C. He calls and he's like, "I heard what happened," and he says, "I've seen this movie before. Right? Here's what's going to happen. You are going to go to prison. You're not going to be able to go back to your alma mater or go visit your parents who live in Florida, or there's going to be a lot of things that will be taken away from you." And he was like, if I said upset, that would be, that wouldn't do it justice. He was ready to go to prison, um, because he was like, the only thing that we could do is take action, take matters into our own hands. And I was like, yeah, that's not the answer. And But I understand now more than I did then why he felt what he felt,
Yeah.
based on what he had lived through and experienced, right? So you know for us it was like, I thought I was gonna die, Marc, and I remember talking to a reporter, and the reporter's like, "So what was it like in the moment?" I said, like, when I realized I was gonna die. And they're like, "Well, you couldn't have realized that. Like, I can't write that because you didn't die." And I said, "But I'm telling you how I felt." And he was like, "Yeah, but you can't say that you knew you were gonna die because you didn't die." And I said, "Okay, you know what? It's okay. Let's go on to the next." And it wasn't until I saw George Floyd on the pavement,
Wow.
and when he cried out for his mom who had passed, I said, that is when he knew. That is what I felt. And for like years, I wasn't able to really put it into words until that moment, like put into words that people could understand, and connect to.
Mm.
But for us, it was like the fact that I didn't die that night. Um, sometimes in and of itself is hard to deal with, but also allows me to think there's a reason,
Mm.
there's work, there's something for me to do here, why my life didn't end that night. So then it's about choice. I could choose to stay stuck in the emotion of the moment, that took us down that path, or I could use the energy from that moment to help people free themselves of their own moments of significant doubt, or or moments that would cause someone to believe that they have no reason to have hope. So we've chosen, the former, and
Mm.
been pouring into, like corporate execs, educators, young people, the understanding that those things that happen to us, um, can be significant, but what is more significant is what happens in us in those moments,
Mm.
right? And upon reflection on the things that happen to us. So yeah, so we just choose to use that to give hope, wherever we can.
So part of one of the words you mentioned just is one that I'm hearing repeatedly in these conversations, and it was reflection. Are there some ways that you help young people or corporate leaders kind of start self-reflection? Isn't something that's often done in our Western culture, at
Hmm.
least in my experience of coaching leaders. It doesn't seem like something that they readily flock to. So, are there some things that you've found that help them to kind of get more comfortable with that?
Absolutely. Like,
Okay.
one of the things that we do is we talk about having an attitude of gratitude, and every day really stopping to think about what are some of the things for which you can be grateful, and really
Wow.
taking that moment, right? Because the dots only connect in hindsight. We say 2020 happens in as you reflect, because in the moment there's so many times where things just, it doesn't feel like it makes any sense,
Mm.
and that's okay. You do what you can with what you have, and you have teammates and colleagues that bring their individual best, and you bring your collective best to whatever the situations are that present, and through that you grow through it, not just go through it, you grow through it. And
Mm.
that growth often happens when we stop and reflect on what are the learnings, what are the lessons in there that I could then bring to my practice as a leader, what are the lessons in there that I could bring to my practice as a father, as someone that contributes in the community, as a husband, etc. So, and that is a critical process for us in terms of how we engage, because that's where it's so rich with learnings.
And it's not just theory; it's life. Thank you for committing. Thank you for continuing to push through you and your wife and your family. Where can people find more about you and the services you offer?
Yeah, OrlandoBowen.com
Okay.
is one of probably the easiest place. I've got a podcast coming out.
Yay!
Excited about it. It's called It's Complicated with Orlando Bowen, and we talk about things. Well, people will ask, well, how could you forgive someone who did something like they stole your career, they almost killed you? And I'm like, this is complicated. Let's have a conversation. It's not, oftentimes we're looking for solutions that are like, in boxes or black and white or, 1, 2, 3 type of thing. And sometimes life doesn't work like that. Sometimes the things that we have to journey through, they're complicated and they're nuanced. So we have to bring our understandings and leverage others' understandings in journeying through that to get to where we should be.
Where can we find that?
Yeah. So that's going to be, It's Complicated is going to be on iTunes, on Spotify. I believe the first episode is live right now. So
great.
But we're just getting the video. The editors are finishing up the video, so it's just the audio that's available right now. I'm excited about that. We've got 9 episodes for the first season. So get on there, Marc. Let me know what your thoughts are.
I'm going to subscribe right after this. Absolutely. Because you're right. It's about nuance. It's about nonlinear thinking. And I love that you talk about your purpose. There's got to be a purpose. Yeah, I can't add to what you've said. You've said it better than I will. Thank you so much, Orlando, for helping me celebrate this important time in my life. And thank you for helping leaders across the world really grow and not get stuck and actually find out that they may have leadership stuff that they didn't realize they had.
Absolutely. Honored to be here. I'm celebrating you, Marc.
Woohoo! After this, we're probably beating Chip Gaines after my conversation with you. Awesome. Everybody go to OrlandoBowen.com, go to onevoiceoneteam.org, and support the work that Orlando's doing. Thanks, Orlando, again. We'll see you on the other side.
Take care, Marc. Thank you.